Okay, so first of all, thank you very much for inviting me. It's always great to be asked to come and speak. Do it quite a bit, so I'm used to it. I think that one of the things I wanted to emphasize in this particular session is that the cloud, obviously the smart TV is here to stay, it's not going away. But one of the things we talked about in the panel discussion this morning was that the ecosystem is really important for it to be successful. So if you look at it from a content delivery, the fact that we're going to have some content built on-premise, some content built in the cloud, but for a lot of the sort of growth, you're going to need to have massive infrastructure to be able to deal with some of the growth aspects. So that's really what I'm going to sort of like focus on, and obviously bringing in the smart TV as much as possible. So let me move on. So I'm going to talk to you about CloudOS and some of the global trends that we're seeing in Microsoft, and some of the industry things we're seeing. We're going to talk to you about some of our media services and some other IoT and machine learning aspects. I did actually cut down my presentation. Although you have the content, I've actually cut down the presentation to take out the machine learning because I had too many slides. I'm going to talk to you about the next version of Windows and what that means to you potentially as a business. And I'm going to show you some real-world examples of where we have IoT and some of the Windows media, or some of the media services that have been run through a lot of the smart TVs that you guys know. But I thought, first of all, I'd just start with a presentation from our new CEO. And one of the things that amazes me about Satya Nadella is that he's actually been CEO for less than a year. And in that year, if you look at the changes that Microsoft has gone through as an organization, and I just talk about some of the partnerships that we have now. If you look at things like, you know, we moved from Windows Azure to Azure. And you know why? Because customers said it's confusing. It's actually, we run more than we run Linux, we run Java, we run .NET, Ruby, Python. And then we signed a deal with Oracle. You can actually use Oracle and buy Oracle from our Azure cloud. If you'd have said that to me a year ago, I'd have said, there's no way that's going to happen, right? No way. And so it goes on. SAP, you can run SAP in Oracle's cloud now. And so Salesforce.com, all these things were just been non-starters a year ago. And it just goes to show that I've been involved with this sort of business for a long time now. And the reason for these changes and these fundamental changes is because the services that customers want are predicated on these kind of deals, this kind of ecosystem being put to place. If we don't have those, and say, oh, it's only going to be this, or it's only going to be that, you don't tend to get much movement there. I did also want to mention, I don't know if you guys saw this, but yesterday we actually announced that .NET was actually open sourced. And that's massive. I mean, it's just once again a recognition that as an industry, you know, customers actually want to be able to work on heterogeneous environments and heterogeneous devices. I also wanted to mention we spend $9 billion a year in research. We have done for a significant lot of time. And many people probably don't know this, but we actually outsource all of our research. It's not something that we guard jealously. We actually partner with all the universities, not all of them, but many of the universities in the world. And the reason we do that is because it helps us extend our research facilities. We've got some very bright minds all around the world actually helping us with the research projects that we have. And if I look at some of the things that we actually have deployed, I cut out the machine learning aspect in this presentation because machine learning is at the core of a lot of the tools and services that we're offering customers now. And if you look at the English to Chinese translation tool that we've developed, that's based on 10 years of machine learning. And we had plateaued for a long time, and suddenly, you know, with new computing power and that kind of stuff, you can actually now sign up and get the Chinese to English to Chinese, or translate the Skype translator. So you can talk English, and at the other end comes out the language of the person that you're talking to. Think about the implications for smart TV on that space. Think about the opportunities for interactions from businesses to consumers. Look on the fact that when you talk to somebody via a video link, it's actually really empowering, and it's really much more. It's a much better experience for the customer. And I look at this from we've got a lot of interest in these kind of technologies in the public sector space, who are dealing with, you know, immigrants and all that kind of stuff, but also in the help desk space, where where somebody's actually calling into help desk and they're getting a video, the video translation going because the person isn't able to speak in the language that the help desk is speaking in. So think about that from the consumer perspective, using regular TVs, going to services, and having these kind of facilities available. I also wanted to mention Cortana, and Cortana is something that we actually are seeing quite a significant traction in, and one of the things that I wanted to just showcase, and I'm hoping this will, I was going to do it on my watch, because I have Cortana on the watch, but it doesn't speak back on the watch. So I thought what I would do is actually just ask Cortana a question. It knows where I am, it knows I'm in Seoul, it knows where I live, and let me ask you a question. How long will it take me to get home? So what happens now, this goes up to the cloud, and it'll come back.
It doesn't look like you can get there by car.
So it's telling me that I can't get to home by car, which is a fair statement, right? Now, probably not much use, but that's the kind of thing that we're seeing a lot more opportunity in business in that space too. For instance, guiding people in a production facility to specific areas in a certain time. So those are key areas. The other thing I wanted to talk about was a lot of the Internet of Things are significant work that's gone on for a long time, and many of you don't know that we have a digital crimes unit inside Microsoft, and they sort of like police the internet from viruses all around the world. And you can go to so the infected machines that we know about, that the botnets have taken control over, that we're fighting all the time and taking down their services. But whenever I take a customer to this particular facility, there's a huge smart TV where the customer walks up to and they can see a picture of the world, and you can drill down using the data that we've collated from the sort of IoT stuff that we have around all the feedback coming in. And invariably, they always go down to the road that they live in any part of the world, to find out whether or not there's any viruses in their street. And it's actually I always like to show that as an example to customers, because it's actually a sort of like a real-world understandable thing that you can actually see, 4 million viruses around the world, and you can go down to your street to find out whether there's a problem in your street or not.
Oh, my. So we thought about using a different dog, this time a little bit more challenging. Let's see if Cortana behaves this time. Cortana, what kind of dog is this?
Could you take a picture for me?
Anyone care to guess what breed of dog this is? A Ridgeback? Let's see if Cortana agrees with you.
I believe this is a Rhodesian Ridgeback.
Wow. Thank you.
So think about some of the opportunities that you may have in your own areas and your own operations and your own customer interactions, where maybe some of these new technologies are actually going to play a major part going forward. And sometimes it's hard to actually understand how that maybe adds value in a lot of things. But significantly, we talked about earlier on, some of the older people who are not necessarily getting around, being able to show pictures, being able to get feedback. The Internet of Things is a massive opportunity for us, and is here today. It's not tomorrow. It's actually being used today with many, many, many people. So some of the global trends we're seeing, nothing that you guys probably don't already know about, obviously mobility, social cloud, but I also think that there's another one. And so although we talk about the mega trends, we think security is one of the biggest things now, and it's not because all of the break-ins and stuff, but people are much more careful about their data now. Data and privacy is a really important part for customers going forward. And we've always tried to take a leadership role in that space. And so we think that spending in this space, we know is going to go ballistic in the next couple of years. All the analysts are forecasting that. And if you look at some of the trends, spending on big data is going to double. We know that most organizations are taking up some cloud operations. And so what does that mean for the smart TV industry? It means that a lot of these services that are going into the cloud now will be consumed by people on smart TVs, whether they be at the desk or actually in the home. And I mentioned this morning about what the panel thought really about having the situation where a consumer device and an enterprise device, like we have with the PC and the tablet environment today, there's enterprise devices and there's consumer devices. And should they be the same? And I think that the general feeling is that maybe the consumer devices are going to have a few more bells and whistles from a content perspective, but then you'll look at the enterprise devices have more enterprise type features, like maybe more authentication or the ability to actually have some of the internal systems show up on those environments remotely and wirelessly, for instance. And I'll talk about some of those options for us later on. The other thing that we're seeing now is obviously this massive growth of data. The growth of data driven by things like machine learning and M2M and Internet of Things is going to drive the sort of storage requirements of every customer. And one of the things I do know is very true is that most of your IT shops don't have the money to actually be able to support a great deal of these growths in data. And so it is really important that should the industry be held back because of the costs involved in doing this, when we know that the cloud options are going to provide significant benefits to customers around that space. So you can look at the numbers. I'm not going to call them all out, but what we do know is that IT typically spends 70% of the budget it has today just keeping the lights on. It doesn't have any money to actually have projects to load new infrastructure in for IoT projects to come in. So these are areas of opportunity for cloud. And one of the things that I would say to you is that as organizations, and we partner greatly with Samsung and LG and Philips, they're all global partners of ours. And one of the things that I see is that very few industries can actually afford to put this infrastructure in place to bring all this IoT data together. It's very expensive. And in a lot of cases, you need to think about from a sort of regulatory perspective where you store it. It's not just a simple case of storing it in one location, having one huge data center in the world that you can bring all your data to. That doesn't fly. Regulators in a lot of cases just want the data to be stay in the same area. So those are big issues for lots of corporations to deal with. And I think, to be honest, if you look at what the analysts are saying, there's probably only really 3 companies that are able to probably help you in that space. One being AWS, one being Google, and the other one being Microsoft. I think IBM have got a chance. I think HP have got a chance. But I think at the end of the day, it's such a huge investment to put this infrastructure around the world to support some of these new technologies that they can't really afford to do it. And they've come at the game too late, really. But that's just what the analysts are saying. I think at the end of the day, we believe that we actually have the right kind of infrastructure to support you both on-premise and in the cloud. So we talked about some of the growth areas, and I don't know about you, but my wife will never watch soccer with me, or football as we call it in England, and soccer as I live in America, so I get used to calling it soccer. She won't watch soccer with me ever, but when the World Cup comes on, she'll watch it, because it's just a bit bigger, and it's the same with the golf. She'll watch the Masters, but she won't watch any other golf stations that I want to watch, and so that provides an opportunity for providers, content deliverers, and content owners to actually be able to do this. The problem is, you need huge amounts of infrastructure to drive it. And so, once again, could the smart TVs organization support this kind of stuff? No, they're not really into the content stuff. You want to be the content provider, visualization of the data. And so here's a huge opportunities for some of the set-top boxes, some of the internal workings with the smart TV environment to work with some of the biggest content providers around this space. And we also know that more people are actually using multiple screens to view content, whether it be mobile phones, whether it be smartphones, whether it be tablets, or whether it be PCs. There's a whole bunch of tools now available to do this. But do they actually mean more viewers? And so what we're seeing is that people who are actually watching on multiple devices tend to watch a significant more amounts of TV than people who didn't before. So these are some pretty good statistics to show the opportunity that has. And so if I walk into my house and I'm watching something on my screen, it'd be nice for me to be able to go to my smart TV, of which I have a bunch. Actually, I have a couple of LGs and a bunch of Samsung devices in my house, to be able to share that screen straight away with my big screen TV. Because although I watch TV on the little screens, I don't really like watching it. It's not really my favourite choice. I'd much rather see it high def, looking at a big screen, 55-inch TV screen in my front room or in my office. So those are interesting options for the industry to actually consider how we actually take that. And we think we have an option for customers going forward that's available today. Miracast is something that we actually have in Windows today, and the ability to be able to, share content into multiple devices by a wireless means. That's an interesting statistic for the smart TV industry to consider. 42% more television than those who watch TV only. So the fact that you guys have cell phones, smartphones, and devices means that you have a much better opportunity with the live content and certain content to be able to showcase the value of what you're actually doing. But as I mentioned before, there are challenges to doing this. You don't have a whole bunch of infrastructure sitting around waiting to just actually have the next big live event or the next big presidential event or wedding or whatever you have that's massive from a sort of a content delivery perspective. And that's a problem for many customers, and that's where the cloud providers are going to be able to provide that solid base engine for customers to use. And we've got examples of where content deliverers actually use their own content services on their own premise, and then when they know they've got a huge spike in load, they immediately just flip the load over to us or to some of the other folks involved in this business. And that's exactly what you want. You want to be able to have that flexibility to go from one stage to the other, right? So the other thing I want to mention was we do have... So how can the cloud help? We talked about this. I think that if you look at it from a sort of being able to scale back, scale up. These are things that we do. Most of the top three guys who do this for a living all the time. That ability to provide that mobility, so you can move from different platforms, and obviously some speed to market. The fact that you don't have to wait for some of your infrastructure to be ready to be able to try out some of this new content. And so what we're seeing is a lot of content, and a lot of the content delivery services get floated up and get floated down very quickly because it didn't work. It's a typical marketing type scenario where they've got this huge idea that, hey, some of these ideas don't work and they can shut it down quickly. Whereas in the old way of working, what would have happened is you'd have had to have created it, somebody would have created a whole bunch of devices and servers, and you'd have run the application up, it would have taken probably 9 months to do, and then somebody said, well, this ain't working, and so, you shut it down. It would have been hard to shut down in the old days. Nowadays, it's much easier for projects and marketing and content to be shut up and down very quickly without too much fuss. The other thing about this, from the smart TV perspective, you'll be able to get more monetization about what people are doing. And so this content monetization is actually quite an interesting area. And I know that it breaches some areas where people maybe have some concerns, but I think we'll come back and I'll talk about that a little bit later. Oh, pressing the wrong button. So I wanted to explain some of the scale of the organisation that we run on our Azure services. 430 billion authentications. And for those of you that are based in security or IT type services in your shops, you understand that's a skill set. That's a huge skill set to be able to offer some of those areas. And I'm not going to repeat all the sort of statistics are up there, but we've got a significant traction in the space, and we're actually being seen as pretty good leaders in this particular field of providing what I call the roads for the smart TVs that are the cars. And that's an analogy that I think that will work forever. You expect the roads to be there for you to drive your car. You expect the content providers and the resources to be there to provide services to your smart TV environment. You cannot afford to do that globally. So what we think is that, what we think here is that we have a vision of on-premise and in the cloud scenarios based on your demand for services that you're providing to your consumers. We actually believe it unlocks the insights into the data by doing this in a much more powerful way. And we also think that we know there's a lot of historical and legacy applications, and sometimes people aren't really interested in that legacy space. you and most of your organisations can't do that, but the real juice for you going forward is in modern applications. Once again, I'll come back to modern applications a little bit later on. So this integrated platform, obviously with identity, I mentioned Active Directory is obviously one of the largest environments in the world from an authentication perspective, but Azure virtualization and the data platform. And we also think that the model of on-premise or in-cloud DevOps is a very quick way of you being able to get content and services and applications. And one of the things I fully agree with the panel this morning, it's all about the content and it's all about the apps. Really, that's what content is really apps, and apps is really content. So people choose the services based on the quality of that. They don't care about the infrastructure. Nobody really cares about whether the lights are on, as long as they come on when you switch them on. So I wanted to mention the media services and what we're actually doing in that space today. So if you look at where we managed the Sochi Olympics from within our platform, and it was availability to stream any particular event to any particular device, and we were able to do that with a huge amount of success. And so it was very agile for the consumer and for the partner, and it was very cost effective. And once again, once the event's finished, they shut it all down and they archived the stuff, and it's done. And it wasn't infrastructure that needed to be kept up forever. And I also liken this to maybe, some of the other high peak workload environments. And give me an example, like I think 2 days ago was Singles Day in China. So there's a huge amount of sales on that particular day. How do you actually get your services ready to provide services where you're probably 150 times on demand more than before? How do you do that? And so having this ability to ultimately scale using cloud partners is a really critical part of this. So how are some of the media services being used today? So obviously video to the masses, obviously broadcasting, the next generation live events, I just mentioned Sochi. And we also have the ability for you to be able to work with content providers using the cloud as a sort of like a content vehicle for you both to collaborate together with. So if you're engaging with a content provider from outside of the smart TV industry because they have a particular piece of content you want to go on there, you have the ability to be able to work together on the content in the same space. The other thing is about obviously content management. How do you actually keep how you keep this stuff going? How you keep it backed up? How you actually look after the sort of management of the environment globally? Just take a drink a minute. Oh, by the way, I wasn't going to say this, but the previous speaker mentioned about smartwatches, and he said, he said that the elderly were actually taking this on, and I thought, oh my God, I can't really talk about this now. And so what I did was, I'm looking at my blood, my heartbeat at the moment, and I wondered what it would change like when I was speaking. In actual fact, it's been pretty consistent, around about 65 to 70. But I was loath to say it after you said, well, it's old people looking at these watches, But I encourage you to have a look at this, because it's actually a little bit more than a pedometer. It's actually got heart rate. It's actually got, you can have messages on it. You can actually talk to Cortana on it, and you can get reminders on it. And you can also buy Starbucks on it as well, which I'm a huge Starbucks fan. So these are things that are important to me. The other thing that we just released actually is the ability for you to take the content and actually provide it to video to your internal audience. And so I mentioned this earlier. I'm seeing a lot more smart TVs now coming into the offices, and that's for a number of reasons. Some of it is because we all collaborate together sometimes, and it's easier if you actually got one screen on the wall that's probably above 45 inches or 50 inches, or even the small monitors, 27, 30-inch monitors, right? You're able to actually, as a corporation, deliver message and content and training out to your customers and your people, the employees. But the other thing about that, you're able to have the ability to share. And one of the things that I think is critical in the space at the moment, I talked to Mr. Kim at lunchtime today. Do you remember the days when we just used to turn up with any machine and hook it up to a monitor? Those days are gone. If you go to any of the Microsoft campus environments now, there is an armband of dongles that allow you to connect to different devices to the screens. And we just converted over, actually, about 2 weeks ago. We converted all of the conference centres in Redmond to Miracast. So everybody running Windows 8.1 can actually hook into the Miracast projectors. But my point about this is that we went through having a standardized environment for so long, everybody took it for granted. And now there's probably 8 or 9 different monitor type cables you need now to hook up. And how frustrating is it when you go there and, oh, they haven't got the dongle you want, or you left your dongle in the office. Those are key areas. And so why is that relevant to the smart TV? Those kind of wireless type connections have to be the norm going forward, because people are sort of frustrated by the fact that, you know, you can't easily connect. And who really likes wires anyway? I mean, you know, at the end of the day, people don't really like to have the wires hanging down in the first place. So I thought that was an interesting point to say. How are we doing for time? Well, about 10 minutes. So I wanted to talk to you socially about the numbers, but I'm going to probably skip through that. 18 days of content, 10,000 hours of HD streaming. By the way, all these slides are available for you guys, so it's all already printed. 500 million storage transactions, and 2.1 billion viewer streaming events with the US and Canada hockey games. So that's pretty impressive. And I also wanted to point out, this stuff isn't cheap. For those of you thinking about bringing your own content provision into the space, Google know about this, we know about this, Amazon know about this. It isn't cheap. Those data centers are massive investments. And in a lot of cases, you need that to need those edge and those data centers to be able to get content delivery in a fast way. But also, sometimes it's to actually appease the regulators. The regulators are on our case about data all the time, and we know, we all live in the same thing, and the Googles and the Amazons and Microsofts of the world live that kind of scenario. So don't think it's going to be easy for anyone to say, you know what, we're going to be a global content provider. It's not easy. So I love Satya's leadership. I love his style. He's very direct. He gets on with the industry. We've had more interactions with the industry and agreements with the industry in the last 9 months than probably ever before. And I think that one of the things that you'll see, he's a real deep thinker, and he comes out of the cloud and enterprise group, and so he understands the work we've been doing around machine learning and IoT. And so I actually love this particular slide. So I want to introduce you to Azure ML. It's a very, very quick overview about this. It's a really, you can actually go ahead and play around with Azure ML today. It's available for you to go online and actually work on some of this. And I think that at the end of the day, it's here. It's already being used by numbers of customers. It's about reducing the complexity to make sure that we can broaden the participation. And one of the problems that we have around this kind of space at the moment is not a lot of people who've got a great deal of experience in this space. And one of the things I get asked all the time is, you know, how do we go and get these people? And I'm saying, well, you know, you partner with the schools, you partner with the universities. These are key areas of where the universities have been doing a lot of great work in this space for a long time. And I think that the other thing as well is that it's actually visualizing the data that's coming out of this machine learning environment. And I mentioned Cortana, and you saw the photograph, but also the data translation stuff. Sometimes it's not a quick exercise. The other thing that we're finding a bit of difficulty in is actually in how you visualize some of that learning. What are you seeing? Or how are you being able to present it? And an interesting thing for me is that when we come to talk about IoT and machine learning, there is one group of people inside every company that's actually pretty good at this already. And people don't know about it. And typically, the reason they don't know about it is because they're the finance people. They're dealing with massive numbers all the time. And they've jumped all over this. If you come to Microsoft at any time at Redmond and you actually get a presentation about machine learning or the operational use of machine learning and the IoT, most of the times it'd be a finance person. And you know why? Because they're used to dealing with massive numbers, and at the core of our machine learning and presentation stuff is the Excel with some of the Power Builder and some of the Power Views that we have now with that, which are massive, able to deal with masses and masses of data. Don't think Excel can't manage masses of data, as it can. Okay. There's a couple of books here. I'm not going to read them all out to you. These are quite interesting books. I've actually been through a number of these already. I haven't read them all. I didn't read Predictive Analysis, but I encourage you, if you're interested in this space and how that may apply to you and your business and your operations, have a look at those. It's in the documentation. Come on, please. Yes. Okay, cool. So some of the IoTs, we're actually at an inflection point. Some of the forward-leaning business individuals are already connecting and doing these things today, and I've got some examples to show you a little later on. And I think that if you look at the component, a lot of the devices are inexpensive. You look at some of the monitoring, some of the metering, some of the stuff that's available already out in the industry, they're not particularly expensive. Connectivity is a lot easier than it used to be. And development is a common platform and standards, which guys have mentioned as well already before. The standard story is really critical in this particular space. And some of the new scenarios, a lot of it's based around customers getting a better experience, getting a better experience with the products that they're buying, and also being able to, for the customers, for the manufacturers, and I use the smart TV manufacturers as an example, getting feedback on the performance of your devices and how they're working, if they're failing, and what the issues are. It's quite important for you in the way you actually manage your business and your customers' thinking going forward. But we also think that when you look about, say, maybe some of your internal workings around IoT, you've already got a whole bunch of things. And we think the Internet of Your Things is actually something that is actually quite important. And to start small, don't go and try and boil the ocean straight away. Look at some of the areas of opportunity inside your own organization. And look at the business that, look at your own business to maybe start to pilot some of these things before you go a little bit more mainstream. So I want to talk to you about Windows. Let me just go back to the IoT slide a minute. So let me just tell you that some of the, obviously, enterprise thinking around IoT, consumers, we talked about the consumer hub, being able to link all the different devices you have. I think IoT and the smart TV will provide that, what I call this single pane of glass, you to look at your environment in your home. And one of the critical things is making sure that all of the interfaces that the devices in your home can work with that particular device. If you have a Samsung device that won't work with a Panasonic air conditioning unit, that isn't going to help you as an industry. And if you think about where IT as an industry came from, that's exactly the mistake that was made with IT in the early days. If I had my own IP, I didn't want to play nicely with anybody else. It meant that I could still, if I had the IP, I was a king. Those days are no longer here. Customers expect to be able to buy whatever they want and make it work, whatever they've got. So having that smart TV environment able to support the plethora of different devices that customers have in their houses are going to make a strategic advantage for you as a smart TV company in being able to make that happen. I think that the ability to monetize some of the thinking that you might have. So let me give you an example. Say somebody's actually, you have a Connect device, type device inside your smart TV. It knows the husband, the wife, it knows the kids, it knows the type of content that the husband likes to watch and the wife and the kids like to watch. And it can actually also then say, well, I also know that they did some searching on the internet for some stuff. Maybe it's holidays, maybe it's golf, maybe golf equipment or whatever. And able to maybe monetize some of that content down to that particular consumer, depending on who's watching. Likewise, if somebody's watching something that they shouldn't be watching, like maybe the kids watching an M-rated movie or that they shouldn't be watching, and you as a consumer decide, I don't want my children who are under 10 to watch that kind of content. You have the ability to be able to look at that. Those are interesting areas to go forward. So monetizing the IoT data is quite important. The other thing that I think is quite interesting as well is that if you know what I like, when I switch my TV on in the morning after getting up and I'm putting my tie on, I want to see what the weather forecast is or what the traffic is and what the current news is. Having a multi-screen ability to be able to look, so I have a mirror on the screen and the traffic on the screen and how long it's going to get me to work and stuff on the other side of things and the current news, it means I can do 3 things at the same time because I'm really terrible at getting up in the morning. And so those things would help me. And so those are other options that maybe could speed up some of your kids getting ready for school. If you could actually provide some of the content. I don't know about your kids. My kids get up and look at their cell phone every single morning before that, and they lie in bed and work on their cell phone for probably 10, 15 minutes before they get out of bed, which often makes them late. The other thing was obviously healthcare and devices, but I regret mentioning that based on the previous discussion. So Windows 10 and Windows Embedded, what is that going to offer you as a business, and what options do you have? Well, first of all, having a common development platform with all the APIs going from whether it be an embedded device going to a PC, a TV, a tablet, an Xbox, the same code, the same application will run on the same devices. Those are key areas because, once again, content and the apps are king. A common management platform, the ability to be able to maybe provide patches or management of those devices you have. Once again, embedded, it could be ATMs, it could be smart TVs, it could be anything, including your desktop PCs and all the other things that you run in your organizations. Common authentication models, the ability to have a common authentication model, and a common security model. Those are key areas as well. And we're looking at a movement away from passwords. I think there's a general view that passwords are probably no longer a viable concern. I mentioned Miracast, and also for the first time ever, Microsoft is developing Win 10 using a crowdsourcing type of methodology. We've never done that before. We worked in a sort of room inside Redmond, and we gave you a product and said, what do you think, guys? And you said, we don't like it. And so what we're doing now is that the new releases of Windows are actually having you consumers actually get into the program and actually make suggestions, and people who are using Windows 10 today are helping us reduce the product before we go live next year. So that's a new way of doing things. So I mentioned some of that already, and I wanted to just take you through some real-world examples. So ThyssenKrupp, or ThyssenKrupp, whatever you want to, however you want to pronounce it, they're sort of the largest elevator manufacturers in the world. And their goal really was to try to improve the breakdowns and improve their service to their customers. And they have devices on all of their elevators, and they're in some of the biggest and most prestigious places in the world. And so using IoT with us and partnering together, they come up with this really great ability to be able to, and they're super, super happy about the way this has actually worked out. Obviously, FIFA World Cup, and you'll see we've obviously got we're obviously, thank God for NBC Sports. I watch my team West Ham United every Saturday morning at 7 a.m. online, live, which I don't have to pay for. It's wonderful. I don't know how long that'll last. But, I mean, if I have a subscription with my satellite provider, I'm able to log in and use that service. And I think the last one I had was, these are some of the projects that we're working on going forward. Obviously, Rio from the Olympics, and those are some of these. And I think I'm just a little bit on time. That is the end of my presentation. I don't know what happened to that. My end slide. Oh, yeah.